Think men never become emotionally attached? Think again. That's one of the biggest myths about relationships. Today we're going to explore the 7 things that truly make a man emotionally invested. And believe it or not, it's probably not what you've been told. It's time to let go of the idea that men don't feel deeply and discover what really creates emotional connection. If he's not emotionally connected to you, it doesn't automatically mean he's cold, and it definitely doesn't mean you're not enough. The truth is, most people misunderstand how emotional bonding works for men. Men don't simply fall in love because the timing feels right. They connect under very specific emotional conditions. If those conditions never appear, even the most amazing woman can leave him feeling like something important is missing. The reality is simple. Men are not emotionally unavailable. They are emotionally careful. They open their hearts, commit, and stay connected only when certain emotional experiences make them feel safe inside. It isn't only about chemistry. It isn't just about attraction. And it isn't because everything feels perfect. There are deeper emotional signals happening beneath the surface. Most women never hear about them. Instead, they give more. Try harder, replay every conversation, analyze every text message, and wonder why he suddenly becomes distant. But once you understand what creates emotional attachment in a man, everything starts making sense. You stop chasing love and begin creating the kind of connection that grows naturally. This isn't about manipulation or pretending to be someone else. It's about understanding the quiet emotional patterns that build trust over time. Once you recognize them, you'll notice them everywhere. If you've ever wondered why he acts interested one day but emotionally distant the next, or why he seems close but never completely lets you into his world, you're about to understand why. These 7 emotional signals may completely change the way you see male connection. Some of what you're about to hear could surprise you. It may even answer questions you've been asking for a long time. So stay with me until the end, because the final insight often changes everything, and most people completely overlook it. You may believe he's simply emotionally distant, or maybe you've convinced yourself that he just isn't capable of opening up. But what if the real story is very different? Most men are not naturally closed off. They become emotionally guarded because life has taught them to protect themselves. And in many cases, that protection has very little to do with the woman standing in front of them. It comes from experiences they carried long before the relationship ever began. Many boys grow up hearing the same silent message: hide your emotions, stay strong, don't let anyone see your pain. Sometimes those words are spoken directly. Other times they're learned through actions, expectations, or painful experiences. Little by little, emotional expression starts feeling unsafe. By adulthood, sharing fears, sadness, or insecurity can feel unfamiliar, almost uncomfortable. So when a relationship begins, he doesn't leave those habits behind. He brings them with him without even realizing it. That emotional wall doesn't mean he's incapable of loving someone deeply. It simply means love feels like a risk, and when feelings become stronger, something unexpected often happens inside him. Instead of feeling only excitement, another voice appears. What if I get hurt again? What if I disappoint her? What if she discovers parts of me that I've spent years hiding from everyone else? Those questions quietly grow louder as the connection becomes more meaningful. That's why some men suddenly create distance right when things seem to be getting better. It looks confusing from the outside. It can even feel personal. But many times he isn't stepping back because he feels nothing. He's stepping back because the emotions have become stronger than he knows how to manage. And until he feels emotionally safe, his instinct is often to protect himself rather than risk exposing the parts of his heart he's spent years keeping hidden. Let's be honest for a moment, many men have been emotionally hurt before. Maybe they opened their heart once and someone laughed at them. Maybe they trusted someone completely and ended up betrayed. After experiences like that, vulnerability no longer feels like closeness. It feels like standing in the open with no protection. And to him, that can feel dangerous. So when he seems emotionally distant, it isn't always pride. It isn't always stubbornness. Many times it's fear that has never fully healed. A fear that if he truly shows who he is, he'll be rejected, criticized, or lose the version of himself he spent years building just to survive. The strange part is that this same fear keeps him away from the connection he secretly wants the most. Deep down, he wants someone who feels safe enough to trust. He wants to relax instead of constantly protecting himself. The good news is that emotional walls are not permanent. They were built for protection, not for life. When the right emotional atmosphere appears, one filled with patience, honesty, consistency, and real acceptance, those walls slowly begin to fall. Not because someone forced them down, but because trust quietly replaced fear. That process never happens overnight, but when it starts, everything changes. Stay with me because the first emotional trigger we're about to uncover is exactly where that transformation begins. And once you understand it, you'll start seeing relationships in a completely different way. There is one moment that can completely change how a man sees you. Surprisingly, it isn't when you're perfectly dressed. It isn't when every conversation flows effortlessly. And it isn't even when the attraction between you feels strongest. The real turning point comes when he sees the real you, not the polished version, not the version trying to impress everyone, the honest version that isn't afraid to show genuine emotions. Shared vulnerability is one of the strongest emotional bridges that can ever exist. Why does it matter so much? Because many men don't simply fear being judged, they quietly expect it. They have spent years believing that showing emotion makes them weak or exposed. So when someone appears who is emotionally open without creating pressure, without making them feel ashamed, and without expecting immediate results, something unexpected happens inside them. The pattern they've lived with begins to break. Without saying the words directly, your actions communicate something powerful. You are safe here. You don't have to pretend. You don't have to hide behind confidence every second. You can simply exist as yourself. That silent message reaches deeper than most compliments ever could. Keep watching because the next insight reveals why this simple shift changes everything, and most people completely miss it. This is where many people accidentally misunderstand vulnerability. It doesn't mean telling every painful story the first time you meet. It isn't unloading years of emotional pain onto someone who barely knows you. And it definitely isn't rushing into huge emotional declarations before trust has had time to grow. Real vulnerability is much quieter than that. It is choosing to reveal honest parts of yourself little by little. It is allowing someone to see your strengths as well as your imperfections while still respecting yourself. For a man to become emotionally connected, he needs to feel that he isn't only learning facts about your life. He needs to experience your emotions in a genuine way. That emotional honesty creates something powerful between two people. It becomes a mirror. When you gently open the door instead of forcing it, he becomes more willing to walk through it himself. Maybe not immediately, maybe not every single time. But if he believes your openness is real and emotionally safe, his defenses slowly begin to soften. He spends less energy protecting himself and more energy simply feeling the connection. His walls don't disappear because someone demanded vulnerability. They lower because someone quietly demonstrated what healthy openness actually looks like. Real connection isn't pushed, it's invited. And that invitation often becomes the beginning of emotional attachment. Most men are not secretly waiting for someone to impress them every single day. What many of them are actually waiting for is something much deeper. They want to feel understood without constantly explaining themselves. When your honesty comes from authenticity instead of trying to get a certain reaction, you naturally become different from everyone else. That difference stays in his mind long after the conversation ends, and that is often where real emotional attachment quietly begins. Now let's move into the second emotional trigger, because this one is overlooked almost everywhere, even though it changes everything. Every man's emotional journey reaches a point where something inside starts shifting. Interestingly, that shift usually isn't caused by attraction alone. It isn't caused by admiration either. It begins when he feels truly understood, not simply heard, not politely listened to, but understood on a level that reaches beneath the words he actually says. Many men rarely experience that kind of emotional space. They're used to hearing opinions about what they should do, how they should act, and who they're expected to become. So when someone enters their life without trying to fix every flaw, change every habit, or analyze every emotion, something inside relaxes. Instead of feeling examined, he feels accepted. He may never say those words directly. He might hide the feeling behind humor or a casual smile, but deep inside, one quiet thought begins repeating itself again and again. She really sees me, and once that feeling appears, emotional connection starts growing in ways that are difficult to describe but impossible to ignore. And not only the version he shows to the world, but the version he's quietly hidden for years. That changes everything. It's powerful, it's uncommon, and it's something he never forgets. When a man truly feels understood, he begins to feel accepted. And once acceptance is there, trust starts to grow naturally. Emotional attachment isn't built through perfect compatibility or checking every box on a list. It grows through emotional safety. When a man realizes he can reveal something honest, imperfect, or difficult to explain, and you don't pull away, criticize, or make him regret it, something shifts deep inside. That quiet shift is where real bonding begins. You don't have to agree with every opinion he has. You don't need to solve every problem he faces or carry every emotional burden for him. Sometimes the greatest thing you can offer is simply your presence, calm, genuine, steady. In those quiet moments between conversations, he begins to feel seen. When you reflect his emotions with kindness, respond with empathy instead of judgment, and choose curiosity over control, you're creating something much stronger than attraction. You're building emotional trust. It may not look dramatic from the outside, but inside him, it's creating lasting change. Stay with me because the next emotional trigger builds on this foundation, and most people never notice it until it's too late. Sometimes these moments are so quiet that they almost seem invisible, but never underestimate their impact. Even if he never says a word about it, he feels the difference. That quiet understanding makes him want to move closer instead of pulling away. This kind of emotional acceptance doesn't simply attract him. It gives him a reason to stay. It allows him to stop pretending, stop carrying emotional armor, and begin showing up as his real self. Once he experiences that kind of clarity, walking away doesn't feel easy anymore. It starts feeling like leaving behind something he didn't even know was missing. Now let's move into another emotional shift, one that grows slowly but becomes incredibly powerful over time. If there is one quality that quietly strengthens emotional attachment in men while almost nobody notices it, it's consistency. Not dramatic gestures, not constant excitement, just small actions repeated again and again that quietly say, "I'm still here. I'm still the same person you trust." Emotional safety rarely appears in a single conversation. It develops through repeated experiences, and consistency is what keeps that process alive. Don't skip this next part because it explains why some relationships grow stronger while others slowly fall apart. He may not even recognize it consciously at first, but every time you respond with honesty instead of games, every time your words match your actions, and every time your emotional presence stays steady, another piece of trust quietly forms. That consistency sends an important message without needing any explanation. It tells him you're reliable in the healthiest possible way. This doesn't mean you're expected to be perfect every day. Everyone has difficult moments. Everyone has emotions. Real consistency isn't about pretending everything is fine. It's about staying true to your values, even when life becomes stressful. For a man who has experienced emotional confusion, mixed signals, or relationships where he constantly wondered what would happen next, that steady energy feels incredibly comforting. Many people chase intensity because it feels exciting at the beginning. They look for emotional highs, constant excitement, and dramatic moments. But lasting emotional attachment often grows in the opposite direction. It appears when he realizes that being around you feels peaceful, safe, stable. That sense of safety allows him to stop performing, stop testing boundaries, and stop preparing for disappointment. Little by little, his emotional guard starts disappearing because he no longer feels the need to protect himself every second. When a man notices that your kindness doesn't disappear every time you're frustrated, that you don't suddenly vanish when life becomes complicated, and that your care doesn't depend on how much attention he gives you that day, trust begins growing much deeper. And trust is the place where emotional attachment quietly takes root. Anyone can seem amazing for a few exciting weeks or during the honeymoon stage, but what truly matters to him is discovering who you are after several months, after misunderstandings, after ordinary days. and after difficult conversations. He doesn't simply want enjoyable moments, he wants to know the real person beside him. When your emotional rhythm stays balanced through both easy and difficult seasons, he naturally relaxes. His defenses become smaller. Later, when he looks back, he often realizes something important. You were the person he never felt forced to question. Now we're moving into another emotional trigger that reaches much deeper than physical attraction alone. It touches the way his mind works, and once it appears, the connection becomes much stronger than most people expect. Keep watching, because this next insight surprises almost everyone. One of the most overlooked emotional triggers for men is intellectual connection. This isn't only about having serious conversations or sounding intelligent, it's about feeling mentally understood. Attraction may capture his attention in the beginning, but meaningful conversations are often what keep him emotionally invested. Many men rarely admit it, but they deeply value someone who expands the way they think. Not someone who constantly argues or tries to prove a point, but someone who naturally sparks curiosity. When the two of you can talk about dreams, everyday life, strange ideas, personal fears, future plans, or even completely random thoughts, and he feels that you genuinely understand the way his mind works, something changes. Emotional depth begins forming because now the relationship isn't built only on appearance or chemistry, it's built on shared thinking. When he realizes he can comfortably be analytical, creative, thoughtful, playful, or even a little awkward around you without feeling judged, he starts connecting your presence with comfort, inspiration, and peace. Intellectual closeness doesn't require agreeing on everything. In fact, respectful differences often make conversations even more interesting. What matters is showing genuine curiosity about his perspective while confidently sharing your own. That balanced exchange creates trust faster than surface attraction ever could. If your conversations leave him thinking long after they've ended, if he remembers something you said hours later, or smiles because of an unexpected question you asked, you've already become much more than someone he enjoys spending time with. You've become someone who lives in his thoughts, and that kind of emotional and mental connection is incredibly difficult to replace. Now we're about to uncover one of the strongest emotional triggers of all, the one that reveals whether he'll truly believe you'll stand beside him not only during the happiest moments, but also when life becomes difficult. If there is one question that quietly shapes emotional attachment in a man's heart, it is this: does he genuinely feel respected by you? Not only admired, not only appreciated, but respected for the person he truly is deep inside. Love may be what first captures his attention, but respect is often what keeps him emotionally close. Without it, even a relationship that once felt incredibly strong can slowly begin to weaken without either person noticing. A man finds it difficult to build lasting emotional attachment with someone if he constantly feels judged compared to others or made to question his worth. This doesn't mean you have to agree with every decision he makes. It means showing that even when you don't completely understand his choices, you still believe he is capable of learning, growing, and becoming the best version of himself. Real respect always works in both directions. It isn't about one person controlling the relationship while the other simply follows along. It's about creating a space where both voices matter, where both people's values are important, and where healthy boundaries are honored instead of ignored. When a man feels that his opinions are genuinely valued instead of merely tolerated, something inside him begins to relax. That quiet shift is where emotional safety slowly becomes emotional commitment. Stay with me because the next part reveals why this simple principle quietly changes everything in a lasting relationship. Trust grows in exactly the same way. It rarely appears all at once. Instead, it forms through small, ordinary moments that slowly add up over time. The way you respond when he shares something personal, the way you speak about him when he isn't there to hear it, the way you handle disagreements when emotions become intense. These everyday moments quietly answer one important question inside his mind. Can I really trust her with my heart? Not only with my stories or my private thoughts, but with the parts of me that feel the most vulnerable. The truth is, he isn't searching for perfection. He isn't expecting someone who never makes mistakes. What he truly hopes to find is emotional steadiness. Someone who doesn't turn his vulnerable moments into weapons during future arguments. Someone who doesn't keep score every time he falls short. Someone who doesn't play emotional games just to gain control. When he realizes that you genuinely recognize his efforts, respect his boundaries, and believe in his intentions instead of always assuming the worst, his emotional walls begin falling in a much deeper way. Lasting emotional attachment grows when someone feels valued for who they already are, not only for who another person hopes they might become. Keep watching because the next emotional trigger surprises many people, yet it often determines whether love grows stronger or quietly fades away. Everyone enjoys the exciting side of relationships, the laughter, the adventures, the unforgettable memories. Those moments are beautiful, but they are not usually what creates the deepest emotional attachment. What truly strengthens a man's heart is discovering who remains beside him when life becomes difficult. Every person eventually faces seasons of stress, disappointment, failure, uncertainty, or loneliness. During those moments, your response speaks louder than any romantic words ever could. When a man is struggling emotionally, criticism rarely helps. Impatience pushes him further away. Emotional distance only increases the weight he already carries. What he quietly hopes for is someone who stays present without making his pain about themselves. Someone who doesn't rush to fix everything immediately, but simply offers calm support and genuine understanding. That kind of presence sends a message more powerful than almost anything else. It quietly tells him, I'm not only here for the easy days, I'm here for the difficult chapters too. That message stays with him much longer than grand romantic gestures ever will. Don't skip this final section because it brings every emotional trigger together into one complete picture. Being there during hard seasons doesn't require having perfect advice or magical solutions. Often the greatest gift is listening without interrupting, responding with compassion instead of judgment, and reminding him that he doesn't have to carry every burden by himself. That kind of support creates an emotional space where he can finally breathe without constantly protecting himself. And that emotional safety becomes the place where real attachment grows strongest. Many men hesitate before opening up because they quietly worry about becoming a burden or being misunderstood. But when you consistently respond with patience, kindness, and steady encouragement instead of criticism, everything begins to change. He no longer feels like he has to fight every battle alone. Instead, he starts seeing you as someone he can lean on when life becomes overwhelming. That connection isn't loud, it isn't dramatic. It grows quietly through ordinary moments that most people overlook. Yet those moments become the strongest part of the relationship. They transform something that once felt uncertain into something that feels dependable. When he realizes your care isn't based only on convenience or good moods, but remains steady even during difficult times, his emotional investment naturally grows much deeper. And now we're about to uncover the final emotional trigger, the one that quietly connects every lesson we've talked about so far. The last piece of emotional attachment is something many people never fully understand. It is emotional safety combined with personal freedom. At first, those ideas almost seem to contradict each other. How can someone feel deeply connected while also feeling completely free? Yet this balance is exactly what allows many men to fully open their hearts. Emotional safety means he knows he can be completely himself without constantly worrying about criticism, embarrassment, or rejection. He feels comfortable sharing his thoughts, emotions, mistakes, and imperfections because he trusts they won't be used against him later. That kind of safety allows him to stop pretending, stop hiding behind emotional armor, and finally reveal the parts of himself that rarely see daylight. But emotional safety alone isn't enough. He also needs room to remain his own person. He needs space to grow, pursue his interests, spend time alone when necessary, and maintain his identity without feeling guilty for it. When a relationship becomes controlling or emotionally restrictive, attachment slowly begins fading. He may still remain physically present, but his heart quietly starts creating distance. The strongest emotional connections exist where safety and freedom live together. In that kind of relationship, he feels accepted without feeling trapped. He feels loved without feeling controlled. He knows he can move closer because he genuinely wants to, not because fear or pressure forces him to stay. And when both emotional safety and personal freedom exist side by side, they create the kind of lasting bond that many people spend a lifetime searching for. You allow him to remain his own person. You don't spend your energy trying to reshape him into someone else or keep him emotionally trapped. Instead, you create an environment where he feels invited to be honest, vulnerable, and completely himself without feeling pushed or restricted. When a man experiences that rare balance, something meaningful changes inside him. He slowly stops fearing vulnerability because he realizes he won't be punished for opening his heart. At the same time, he enjoys having personal freedom because he knows that distance doesn't automatically mean losing the relationship. That's the moment emotional attachment becomes stronger, more natural, and surprisingly effortless. This is what separates temporary attraction from a connection that lasts for years. When you offer both emotional security and personal freedom, you become much more than someone he enjoys spending time with. You become someone he can genuinely imagine building a future beside. Now that you've discovered these 7 emotional triggers, the real challenge begins. Understanding them is important, but applying them consistently is what transforms relationships from the inside out. Stay with me because what comes next explains why even strong emotional bonds sometimes quietly disappear without anyone noticing until it's too late. Emotional attachment can feel incredibly strong, yet it can also slowly weaken through habits that seem harmless at first. That's why it's just as important to understand what quietly damages connection as it is to understand what creates it. One of the biggest reasons emotional attachment begins to fade is inconsistency. When a man never knows where he stands, when your actions don't match your words, or when your emotional availability changes without any explanation, uncertainty begins replacing trust. That uncertainty creates emotional tension. Instead of feeling secure, he begins protecting himself again. Emotional attachment grows through reliability, and inconsistency slowly weakens that foundation. Another major obstacle is constant judgment. When a man repeatedly feels criticized, misunderstood, or made to feel inadequate, his natural reaction is often to withdraw. Very few people willingly reveal their deepest emotions if they expect rejection in return. If his vulnerable moments are met with impatience, sarcasm, or dismissal, he eventually stops sharing them altogether. That silence doesn't happen because he has stopped caring. It happens because he no longer feels emotionally safe. Don't skip this next section because another hidden habit quietly destroys connection even faster than most people realize. Control is another powerful reason emotional attachment begins disappearing. Trying to constantly change him, monitor every decision he makes, or pressure him into becoming someone different usually creates resistance instead of closeness. Every healthy relationship needs room for both people to remain themselves. When that freedom disappears, emotional safety often disappears with it. Respect and trust can also slowly erode without dramatic arguments ever happening. Every broken promise, every ignored boundary, and every private conversation shared without permission quietly reduces trust, little by little. Without trust, emotional attachment simply cannot continue growing.